You know, every time I talk about the idea of refusing to be defeated, people think it starts with strength, with confidence, with some loud, powerful moment where you shout to the world who you are. But it doesn't start there. It starts in the smallest, quietest place inside you, the decision. The decision that says, no matter what the world throws at me, no matter how dark the room gets, no matter how many times I've failed before, I'm not backing down this time. That's where it starts. And a lot of people don't realize how powerful that decision is. They underestimate it because it doesn't feel big in the moment. It doesn't feel dramatic. It doesn't feel like something anyone else can see. But that's because this part of the journey isn't supposed to be seen. It's supposed to be lived. See, before you ever open your mouth and declare to the world, you can't defeat me, you gotta declare it to yourself. You gotta wake up, look in the mirror, and say it even when your reflection doesn't match the confidence you feel like you should have. Even when your life doesn't look like the life of someone who can't be defeated, that's the hard part. Speaking a truth you haven't seen manifest yet. But that's where champions are built, not when the lights are on, but when nobody's clapping, nobody's watching, and nobody believes it can happen. Not even you. But the decision is still there. The decision is the spark that lights everything that comes after. And when you make that decision, I'm telling you right now, everything around you is going to test it. Life isn't just going to step aside because you made up your mind. It's going to push back. It's going to check your conviction. And that's the moment that separates the people who talk from the people who transform. A lot of folks make decisions in convenience, but you gotta make yours in commitment. You gotta make the kind of decision that still holds its ground when the storms come, when the pressure hits, when it feels like nothing is working. Because if your decision is only as strong as your good days, you don't have a decision. You have a wish. And wishes don't build warriors. You gotta remember who you are, even when life tries to convince you otherwise. You gotta have that internal conversation with yourself where you say, I've been through too much to break now. I've fought too many battles to fall apart here. I didn't survive everything behind me just to let the next thing take me out. Because belief isn't built in the moments when everything goes right. Belief is built when everything goes wrong and you choose to stand anyway. Every time you choose to stick to that decision, you're building a version of yourself that can't be touched by circumstances, can't be shaken by opinions, can't be moved by pressure. The real power behind the statement, you can't defeat me, isn't arrogance, not even close. It's clarity. Clarity of who you've decided to be. Clarity of what you value. Clarity of how far you've come and how far you're willing to go. It's the clarity to say, I might bend, but I won't break. I might get tired, but I won't quit. I might fall, but I'll rise quicker than I ever have before. That's the difference. That's what sets the tone for the entire fight ahead. Because once you've fully committed to that decision, everything else aligns. Your habits shift, your mindset sharpens, your energy changes, your environment becomes filtered through a different lens. Things that used to discourage you don't even hit the same. Things that used to distract you don't get the same access. You start moving like someone who understands their worth, like someone who knows their mission, like someone who has already decided that defeat is not an option. And let me be real with you, this decision isn't about pretending you're invincible. It's not about acting like nothing can hurt you. It's about acknowledging that even when life hits you with heartbreak, with loss, with disappointment, with failure, you're not going to let those things rewrite the truth of who you are. You're not going to let the world define your limits. You're not going to let temporary pain create permanent surrender. You've already decided you're bigger than that, stronger than that, more resilient than that. And that decision becomes the anchor that keeps you steady when the waves get violent. Once that decision is made, everything else becomes a matter of endurance, a matter of discipline, a matter of reminding yourself in the tough moments, I chose this, I chose to rise, I chose to fight, I chose to grow, and I'm not backing off now. And every time you reinforce that decision, every time you act in alignment with it, you build another layer of strength, another layer of grit, another layer of conviction, until one day the version of you standing there is unrecognizable compared to the version that first made the decision. And that's the moment you realize you weren't building confidence, you were building character, you weren't building ego. You were building endurance, you weren't building a moment, you were building a mentality, and that mentality, that's what makes you undefeatable. That's what gives you the right to stand in front of the world, not with noise, not with bravado, but with quiet certainty and say, you can try, but you can't defeat me. When you reach that point in your life where you've made the decision, where you've drawn a line in the sand and said, I'm not backing down, something powerful happens inside you. But making the decision is only the first part. After that, you have to face the part most people run from, the responsibility to become the kind of person who can carry that decision to the finish line. And I need you to hear me on this, because this is where a lot of people fall apart. Not because they're weak, not because they're incapable, but because they underestimate the discipline required to live up to the decision they made. It's one thing to choose who you want to be. It's another thing entirely to act like that person every day, especially when nobody's watching. That's where the real grind begins. The grind where you're not motivated, you're not inspired, you're not hyped. You're just committed. And that's the part people don't glamorize. They want the highlight reel. They want the success story. They want the part where you stand on stage and say, look how far I've come. But what they don't want is the truth behind it. The truth that growth is uncomfortable. The truth that discipline feels like sacrifice. The truth that becoming the kind of person who can't be defeated means you're going to have to let go of the parts of yourself that keep choosing the easy way out. You can't ask for greatness and cling to your excuses at the same time. You can't ask for victory and still entertain the habits that keep you average. And I know that's tough to hear, but it's even tougher to live, because it means you've got to check yourself. You've got to look at your actions, your routines, your mindset, and be honest enough to say, this version of me won't survive the journey I'm trying to take. That level of honesty isn't comfortable, it's necessary. Every champion, every giant, every unstoppable person you've ever looked up to, before they became that person externally, they became someone different internally. They sharpened things you never see. They corrected things you didn't know they struggled with. They sacrificed things nobody applauded. Because they understood something most people ignore. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your habits. And if your habits don't match the future you're chasing, eventually something's going to break. Either you'll change your habits, or your habits will change your destiny. You choose which one it's going to be. And I'm telling you right now, the moment you start changing those habits, the moment you start acting like the person you're trying to become, that's when life starts shifting. You start waking up with a different energy. You start walking differently, talking differently, thinking differently. And others may not notice it at first, but you will. You'll feel something in you start to align, and that alignment feels powerful. It feels like focus. It feels like clarity. It feels like purpose. But that's also the moment where you will be tested the most, because growth attracts resistance. Life is going to check your consistency. It's going to whisper, you can take a day off. You can skip this step. You can cut this corner. And you're going to be tempted, because discipline doesn't always feel rewarding in real time. Sometimes discipline feels like punishment. It feels like doing the right thing when the wrong thing seems easier, faster, more comfortable. But listen to me. Discipline is the language of the undefeated. Discipline is the lifestyle of the unstoppable. Discipline is the proof that you want the result more than you want the comfort. Every time you choose discipline, you are proving to yourself, not to the world, but to yourself, that you can be trusted with your own dreams. That's deeper than motivation. That's deeper than hype. That's self-respect. And once you learn to respect yourself through your actions, you become dangerous not to others, but to anything that tries to stop you. You begin to understand that the person you're becoming is more important than the circumstances you're facing. And when the world sees you operating from that level of discipline, it doesn't know how to handle you. Because you become unpredictable in the best way. You become someone who doesn't quit when it gets hard, someone who doesn't fold when it gets uncomfortable, someone who doesn't look for shortcuts because you're too focused on the destination to settle for temporary comfort. And the crazy thing, once you start living this way, your environment starts changing too. People who used to distract you won't even resonate with you anymore. Habits that once controlled you will lose their grip. Situations that used to overwhelm you won't hit the same, because now you're operating from a place of intention, not impulse. And that's the shift that turns ordinary people into legends, not the talent, not the opportunities, not the luck, the discipline. The daily choices that build a foundation strong enough to handle any storm. And when you've built that foundation, that's when you can look life dead in the face and say, "Try me if you want. I won't break." Not because you think you're invincible, but because you've trained yourself not to fold. You've trained yourself to rise. You've trained yourself to stay consistent even when it hurts. And that consistency becomes your armor. That discipline becomes your weapon. That growth becomes your proof. That's what makes you undefeatable. That's what builds the version of you that the world cannot shake. And once you become that version of yourself, everything changes. There comes a moment in your journey where you finally understand that life isn't fighting you because you're weak. Life is fighting you because you're strong. It's pushing you, stretching you, pressuring you because there's something inside you that can only be revealed under heat. But hear me, the pressure alone doesn't build you. The pressure only builds you when you decide you won't let it break you. And that's where most people fall short. They think pain automatically creates strength. No, pain doesn't create strength. Your response to pain creates strength. You don't get powerful just because you suffered. You get powerful because you refuse to let the suffering define you. You have to look at yourself in those dark moments and say, "This won't be the reason I stop. This won't be the reason I fail. This won't be my ending point." And that's a mindset you can't fake. You can't pretend your way into resilience. You build it one battle at a time. You build it every time life hits you harder than you expected, and you decide to stand back up anyway. You build it when the answers don't come, when the results are delayed, when the doors stay closed longer than they should, and you still choose to keep moving. That's what shapes you into someone who can't be defeated. Because when you're in that kind of process, when you're fighting through something heavy, something painful, something that feels bigger than you, you don't just learn about life. You learn about yourself. You learn what you can survive. You learn what matters and what doesn't. You learn that your heart is stronger than your fears, and your resilience is louder than your doubts. You learn that you're capable of more than you ever imagined, and that realization is powerful. That realization changes the way you walk, the way you think, the way you show up in the world. But let me be real with you. That realization doesn't come easy. It comes through nights when you feel like you're fighting alone. It comes through days where you're tired of trying, tired of hoping, tired of believing. It comes through seasons where the people you counted on disappear, where the support you expected never shows up, where the plan you trusted falls apart. And it's in those seasons that your strength is born. You don't become unbreakable in comfort. You become unbreakable in conflict. You don't find your power when everything is smooth. You find your power when everything is rough and you refuse to collapse. And here's the thing, every time you choose to rise in those moments, you're building a version of yourself that's unstoppable. Not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because you become harder to shake. You start to notice that the things that used to overwhelm you don't hit the same. The situations that used to drain you don't control you anymore. The emotions that used to drown you don't have the same grip. Because now you've seen what you can endure. Now you've survived storms that were supposed to break you. Now you've walked through pain that tried to steal your identity. And once you've survived that level of struggle, the world can't scare you the same way again. But I need you to understand something even deeper. Pain isn't just a test, it's a mirror. When life applies pressure, it reveals exactly where your weaknesses are. It exposes the habits that need to change, the people that need to go, the beliefs that are holding you back. It shows you where you've been settling. It shows you where you've been lying to yourself. It shows you the places where you've been avoiding the real work. And you have two choices. You can run from those truths, or you can face them and let them transform you. The strongest version of you is born when you stop avoiding what hurts and start learning from it. When you stop complaining about the fire and start using it to forge yourself. When you stop asking, why me? And start asking, what can this build in me? That's the moment your entire mindset shifts. That's the moment you stop being a victim of your circumstances and become the architect of your destiny. That's the moment you stop collapsing under pressure and start rising through it. And once you reach that place, once you reach the point where pain doesn't push you backward, but pushes you forward, nothing in this world can defeat you. Because now the thing that used to break you is the very thing that strengthens you. The thing that used to silence you is the very thing that fuels you. The thing that used to intimidate you is the very thing that shapes your identity. And that's when life becomes different. You stop walking around scared of obstacles. You stop worrying about setbacks. You stop stressing over the unknown. Because you've learned how to turn struggle into strength. You've learned how to turn setbacks into strategy. You've learned how to turn pain into power. And when you master that, when you make that transformation, you don't just survive life. You dominate it. You don't just get through storms, you grow from them. You don't just take hits. You turn them into momentum. And from that moment on, nothing life throws your way can stop you, because you've already proven to yourself that you cannot be defeated. There comes a moment in your journey where you stop being shaken by what comes against you and start being sharpened by it. A moment where you realize the world doesn't get to decide your worth, your power, or your destiny. You do. And once you hit that level of awareness, that level of spiritual maturity, that level of internal strength, nothing outside of you can break what's inside of you anymore. That's the shift. That's the place where defeat stops being an option, not because life gets easier, but because you get stronger. You start walking differently. You start talking differently. You start responding differently. And the reason is simple. You finally understand that the battles you face aren't here to stop you. They're here to reveal you. People think strength comes from winning. Nah. Strength comes from surviving what should have destroyed you. Strength comes from pushing when everything in you wants to quit. Strength comes from standing up one more time when even you weren't sure if you could. And once you've been through enough storms, once you've been knocked down enough times and still found a way to rise, you realize something deep. The world can hit you, but it can't defeat you. Pressure can bend you, but it can't break you. Setbacks can slow you, but they can't stop you. You get to a point where the pain that once made you question your worth becomes the proof of your strength. You stop crying about the struggle and start learning from it. You stop running from the hard moments and start running into them because you know the harder it gets, the more you grow. In that growth, that internal evolution, that's the exact thing that makes you undefeatable, not invincible, undefeatable. There's a difference. Invincible means nothing touches you. Undefeatable means it touches you, it hits you, it cuts you, it shakes you. But it doesn't conquer you, because you've learned something most people never figure out. The only way the enemy wins is if you give up. The only way life beats you is if you stay down. The only way the obstacles win is if you stop moving. As long as you keep getting up, as long as you keep fighting, as long as you keep pushing forward, even when it hurts, defeat can't touch you. Losing doesn't come from falling. It comes from refusing to rise, and the crazy thing is, the more battles you face, the more confident you become. Not in the world, not in people, not in luck. Confident in yourself, confident in your ability to endure, confident in your capacity to rebuild, confident in your resilience. You start to develop this quiet, unshakable belief that says, I've been here before, and I'm still standing. I've been hit harder than this, and I'm still moving. I've lost things I thought I'd never get over, and somehow I still rose. So whatever comes next, I can handle it. That's the energy of someone who can't be defeated. Someone who has been tested, pressed, stretched, broken, and still refuses to bow. Someone who has seen darkness and still chooses light. Someone who has felt pain and still chooses purpose. Someone who has faced loss and still chooses growth. You become dangerous to everything that tries to stop you, not because you're fearless, but because you move forward despite fear. Not because you're perfect, but because you're persistent. Not because life is easy, but because you refuse to let it break you. When you reach this point, people start to wonder what's changed. They start to ask, why doesn't that bother you anymore? Why doesn't that setback scare you? Why aren't you stressed like before? And the answer is simple. Because you've already fought bigger battles than the ones they're worried about. You've already survived moments that would have crushed most people. You've already walked through fire and walked out stronger. Once you've seen your own strength, once you've experienced your own endurance, the world can't intimidate you anymore. You stop moving from emotion and start moving from conviction. You stop depending on motivation and start depending on discipline. You stop reacting to everything around you and start responding from what's inside you. That's maturity. That's growth. That's power. The kind of power people can't take from you. The kind of power circumstances can't shake. The kind of power life itself has to respect. And the deeper truth is this. You're not undefeatable because you're stronger than the world. You're undefeatable because you're stronger than the version of yourself that used to quit, stronger than the doubt that used to cripple you, stronger than the fear that used to stop you, stronger than the insecurity that used to silence you. The real victory isn't over the world. The real victory is over your old self. And once you win that battle, once you conquer that internal war, once you rise above the version of you that used to settle, hide, shrink, or surrender, nothing outside of you can ever defeat you again, because now you know the truth. You can't defeat someone who refuses to stop rising.